Hey everybody, hope you're having a good night. We're going to talk about 1-8 Intro to Functions. Good news is this is the last section in Chapter 1. Also remember, as I told you in class today, that you have a Chapter 1 test coming up next Monday. So if you need help with anything we've covered in Chapter 1, you need to get it before Monday. Today we're going to talk about functions, and we're going to talk about how do you graph ordered pairs and how do you graph functions. Our two vocab words today are input and output. Input is the value substituted in for x, and output is the value substituted in for y. I believe you learned about functions before. Usually they talk about functions as a machine of some sort. You have an input into the machine. The function does something, whether it adds 4 or multiplies by 3 or whatever, and then it gives you an output, which is your y value. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is graph ordered pairs, and I believe that you've done this before, but it's important to review. So if you'll copy down this graph here, this is a few things you'll need to remember. The x-axis you can see there in red, and the y-axis in blue. So the x-axis is the horizontal axis, and the y-axis is the vertical axis. If you have a hard time remembering that, the way I remember it is y is a taller letter than x. So y is the one that goes up and down, and x is the one that goes across. I don't know if that helps you or not, but it helps me. Then we have the origin. That's where the two axes meet. In the middle there, its coordinates are 0, 0. And then you can see the quadrants. It's important to note that the quadrants go counterclockwise. Okay, we start in the upper right hand corner with quadrant 1, then quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. You will need to know those quadrants, so please make sure that you have those labeled. Now within the coordinate plane, we use what we call ordered pairs. Ordered pairs have an x coordinate and a y coordinate, and they're usually written x, y. Now the biggest mistake that comes up here is people don't remember which comes first. I just remember that x comes before y in the alphabet, so it comes before y in the ordered pair. X, y. The x coordinate tells us how many units to go to the left or the right. Alright, x-axis is the horizontal one, so it tells us how to move left or right. The y coordinate tells us how many units to move up or down. The y-axis again is the vertical axis, so that coordinate tells us where to go up or down. So the first thing we'll be doing is looking at an ordered pair, graphing it, and then telling which quadrant it lies in. So our first example here, we have point T, and its coordinates are -4, 4. So remember, the first coordinate is the x, second coordinate is the y. So I have -4 on the x-axis, so I'm going to go there, and then +4 on the y-axis. So I want to go to the point where -4 and +4 meet. So this would be point T on my graph. Now it also tells me to tell which quadrant it lies in. Now remember, quadrant 1 starts here, then we have quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So T is in quadrant 2, and instead of writing out quadrant, we can just write a Q. Quadrant 2. Let's look at another one. This one we have 0, -5. So 0 on the x-axis, -5 on the y-axis. That would be down here. And that is point U. Now as you can see, this one isn't really in a quadrant. It's on the y-axis. Okay, this is the x again, this is the y. When you have a point that lies on an axis, either the y-axis or the x-axis, it is not in a quadrant. So we just write none. Okay, it's not in a quadrant. In our last example here, we have point V at -2, -3. So -2 on the x, -3 on the y. Here's point V. And as you can see from our labeling, that is in quadrant 3. So that will be the first part of your homework, is graphing ordered pairs and then telling what quadrant they are in. Then it gets a little more exciting, okay? Then we get to actually graph functions, and this is where it gets a little bit harder. But this is the skill that you will need to have the most as we go throughout the rest of algebra class here. So we're going to have an equation. An equation has two variables that can be used to generate ordered pairs. We will be plugging in values for x and then getting values for y. So here's what your problems will look like as you encounter this part of your homework. So we have generate ordered pairs for y equals x squared minus 5 using x equals -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then it says graph the ordered pairs and describe the pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a table. Okay, and this is how we're going to graph until we learn other ways. So in our table we have an x column. I'm really bad at drawing straight lines on this thing. Let me try that again. I'm just going to get a straight line from up here. Right. So in my table I have an x column. I have kind of a work column, and then I have a column for my ordered pairs. So here's my x column. This is where I write my equation, which is also called a function. And that's where I'm going to do all my work. And at the end I'm going to write my ordered pairs. Okay? So the x values, they will give you -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take -2 and I'm going to put it where the x is in my equation. So I have -2 squared minus 5. Now -2 squared, -2 times 2 is 4. So this is 4 minus 5, which is -1. So my ordered pair is my x value, which I already knew, and then the answer to my equation, which is -1. We're going to do the same thing for the next x value. -1 squared minus 5. -1 times -1 is 1, minus 5 is -4. So then my ordered pair is -1, -4. Now I put 0 in. 0 squared minus 5. Well, 0 squared is just 0. So 0 minus 5 is -5. So then I have the ordered pair 0, -5. Then I'm going to do the same thing with 1. 1 squared minus 5. 1 squared is 1. 1 minus 5 is -4. So then I have 1, -4. And finally I'm going to do the same thing with 2. 2 squared minus 5. 2 squared is 4. So then I get -1. So I have the ordered pair 2, -1. Okay, as you can see, this is quite a bit of work, okay, with the table. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's very important that you take your time and you do the work, okay, so that you can get the right graph. So then once I've created the table, the next part's pretty easy. I'm just going to take my ordered pairs and I'm going to plot them on my graph. So -2, -1, -1, -4, 0, -5, 1, -4, 2, -1. Okay? And I'm not going to connect those. Alright? I'm just going to have my dots. And the final thing, it says describe the pattern. Now this would be a U-shaped graph. Okay, your options are U-shape, V-shape, or straight line. I can tell you here that whenever you have an x squared term in your equation, it's going to be U-shaped. Okay? Now let's look here at one more example. I'm going to do this a little bit faster just because I'm running out of time here. And I'm sure you're getting kind of sleepy, right, Slava? So I'm hurrying up for you. So I'm going to put my x values. Got -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4. I have my equation here in the middle. And I have my ordered pairs over here. That's supposed to be a parenthesis. So then what I'm going to do, again, plug these in. 1/2 times -4 minus 4. So 1/2 of -4 is -2. So I got -2 minus 4, which is -6. So I got -4, -6. Okay, then I got 1/2 times -2 minus 4. Half of -2 is -1. So that's going to be -5. And I got 1/2 of 0, which is just 0. So 0 minus 4 is -4. So then I put 2 in there. Half of 2 is 1. So I have 1 minus 4, which is -3. And then finally I have 4. Half of 4 is 2. 2 minus 4 is -2. So then I have my ordered pairs. And then once again, I'm going to graph those: -4, -6, -2, -5, 0, -4, 2, -3, and 4, -2. Okay, and then the pattern there would be a straight line for my pattern. Okay. Again, if you have any questions about this, please re-watch it, and don't forget to bring graph paper with you tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow.